Hi, guys. I wanted to share a link with you today about the Brizer show from yesterday. Niki Raapana, Lark in Texas, did an interview with Greg Quinones and Brien and Jenna on the Brizer show. My friend Lark has a website, a Lark in Texas. And let me just read you what he says about communitarianism. Communitarianism, first things first. The thesis or the problem: monopolistic crony capitalism, corporatism, mercantilism versus the antithesis or reaction: Judaic Talmudic communism, cultural Marxism, Kabbalahism, equals the synthesis solution: communitarianism. Capitalist and communist share the identical objective: private ownership and control over all means of production. Communitarianism also equals parasitism, a non-mutual symbiotic relationship between groups whereby one group, the parasitic group, benefits at the expense of the other, the host group. Yeah, I think maybe we have a problem with parasites, and maybe that's why people are so easily controlled, mind controlled. That's just my opinion. Neoplatonism, a supremely nebulous and elusive system of theological and mystical philosophy founded in the 3rd century AD by Plotinus. Neocolonialism, a policy whereby a major power uses economic and political means to perpetuate or extend its influence over underdeveloped nations or areas. Neo-feudalism, or new feudalism, a theorized contemporary rebirth of policies of governance, economy, and public life reminiscent of those present in many feudal societies, such as unequal rights and legal protections for common people and for nobility. The concept of neo-feudalism may focus on economics. Among the issues claimed to be associated with the idea of neo-feudalism in contemporary society are class stratification, globalization, mass immigration / illegal immigration, open border policies, multinational corporations, and neo-corporatism. Totalitarianism, a political system in which the state recognizes no limits to its authority and strives to regulate every aspect of public and private life wherever feasible. Totalitarian regimes stay in political power through an all-encompassing propaganda campaign that's disseminated through state-controlled mass media, a single party that's often marked by political repression, personality cultism, control over the economy, regulation and restriction of speech, mass surveillance, and widespread use of terror. A distinctive feature of totalitarian governments is an elaborate ideology, a set of ideas that gives meaning and direction to the whole society. Any of this sound familiar? Despotism, a form of government in which a single entity rules with absolute power. That entity may be an individual, as in an autocracy, or it may be a group, as in an oligarchy. The English dictionary defines despotism as the rule of a despot, the exercise of absolute authority. Communitarianism is a pseudo-scientific technological dictatorship of the so-called global to local community. Communitarianism is also a philosophy that undergirds a system of arrested development that is intended to thwart and or to harvest all human potential to the benefit of its designers. These designers front for the secretive private owners who wield totalitarian control over all territorial assets and natural resources, especially those of the humankind. What is a communitarian and who is Amitai Etzioni? I would suggest that you look him up. What is communitarianism? A 20th century political doctrine which emphasizes the interest of communities and societies over those of the individual. While not necessarily hostile to liberalism or social democracy per se, it does oppose individualist doctrines like libertarianism, which stresses human independence and the importance of individual self-reliance and liberty, and most aspects of modern conservatism, advocating instead ideas such as civil society, the concept of voluntary civic and social organizations and institutions, as opposed to the force-backed structure of a state and commercial institutions. What in the world is communitarianism? The communitarian movement aims to create a new society within the shell of the old, with the philosophy of the quote-unquote new, which is not new. It's not a new philosophy, but rather a very old philosophy, a philosophy so old that it looks new. What the communitarians stand for: we establish for the moment a new world order. 11th of September 2001, everything changed. The world needs a new global architecture, additional layers of governance to deal with issues that neither nations nor traditional forms of intergovernmental organizations can cope with. Communitarianism, the idea and movement in politics. With the demise of true socialism as a viable intellectual force, communitarianism is now the most active philosophical opposition to libertarianism. Communitarianism is usually presented in vague terms, but it probably is best understood as a mild form of collectivism or democratic socialism. Communitarianism has had some influence in the realm of practical politics, as witness the fact that Hillary Clinton is reputed to admire many communitarian thinkers. What is communitarian law? Communitarian law is a new legal system used by regional and local governments affiliated with the emerging global government. The new law circumvents national law via a program of quote unquote balancing, often implemented by a small group of self appointed elites to achieve consensus, not voting. For Americans, the adoption of these evolving principles transports us from a constitutional system where we expect clearly defined basic rights like due process and legal searches to a more moralistic way of enforcing social justice that only a few upper level academics can define. Communitarian law is the precedent that requires the courts to rule in favor of the self-defined quote-unquote community against individuals protected by constitutional law. It limits the property rights of individuals in all member states. The most obvious current communitarian decision handed down by the U.S. Supreme Court is Kelo versus the City of New London, a land rights case that balanced property rights against communitarian development goals. The least obvious communitarian decision handed down by the U.S. Supreme Court is Hybel versus the state of Nevada, a privacy rights case that balanced a private individual's right to anonymity. In all U.S. communitarian legislation and criminal code, the state's stated purpose is to balance the individual rights against community responsibilities. It's called reinventing government. Based on the consensus reached by globalist do-gooders, all nations are now required to adjust their national systems. The world is in an ongoing process of internal reinventions of national political and legal infrastructures. And he links a lot of this stuff is links to Niki's stuff, Niki and Nordica. Talmudic law forms the foundation for communitarianism, Niki Raapana says. The key factor to Talmudic law is that it's not fixed law. It's constantly challenged and rewritten according to case law precepts. And unlike Christian arguments, anyone who objects to the overall authority of the Talmudic law or even portions of it is labeled anti-Semitic. Even the Jews. Many American Jews do not even identify with Judaism. It's also important to note that most Jews did not originally support Zionism. Today, opposition to political Zionism or the religious Talmudic laws are condemned as a racist attitude towards Jewish people and are subject to criminal prosecution in a growing number of countries. Why is the international community adopting it as part of their emerging global to local law enforcement? The effects of imposing a law nobody understands are staggering. So, and then he puts he's put together quite a bit of links here to help you understand and see what communitarianism is. It goes beyond a technocratic society. It is all encompassing. It is a religion. It is a law. It is the restructuring of the very fabric of society. And it will include the Noahide laws. And then so we have, you can just put Niki's name in the search engine and you can come up with other stuff. But this is Niki Raapana Blogspot. And she has a video called The Green Virgin. And you can also get a copy of her book out now too, available in PDF. And it's actually free now. So you can download it and see they've been really trying to warn people since I think something like 2006, maybe even prior to that. But, it doesn't, and I wanted to mention the fact that, Biden, this article came out yesterday as well. Biden's rejection of right-wing libertarianism's blind faith in markets and deregulation that only benefits the wealthiest few also finds expression in the communitarian values of his Catholicism. So, I think even the Washington Post came out on something, I think on November 1st, and talked about Biden's communitarianism. And another interesting little point in this article, the U.S. bishops in 1919 program on social reconstruction released during another global pandemic advocated for major social reforms, a minimum wage, public housing for workers, labor participation in management decisions, and insurance for the elderly, unemployed, and disabled. Those proposals, which drew from Pope Leo VIII's Rerum Novarum, the Church's first social encyclical that addressed the savage inequalities of the industrial age, later helped provide the moral architecture for New Deal reforms pushed by Franklin D. Roosevelt. The industrial age, yes, and we are now what Klaus Schwab says the fourth industrial industrial age. Rage is what I was going to say. Yes, there seems to be a lot of people raging about their politics. People are all riled up and divided amongst themselves over these politics. Meanwhile, it matters not whether it's Trump or whether it's Biden. Trump is communitarian as well. He is as Zionist as they come. And Joe Biden, I saw an interview recently where he was talking about his dad told him he didn't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist, and so he was proud that he could be a Zionist. And that all ties into this communitarian. So I will put the links to all of this, and I hope you will take the time to listen to this interview. Thanks, guys.